Hi everyone, another crazy day in the markets out there. I just want to tell you that manipulation clearly goes on. We saw it AIG being saved. We saw Lehman going to the wolves. We saw Bear Stearns being bought out. We saw IndyMac go down. We saw Fannie Mae being saved. You know, they choose who and what they're going to help. As you can see from the red screen behind me, almost everything down in the market today. Somebody is making some money and lots of it somewhere. I just want to remind people, if they think they're safe with the banks and so forth, their deposits and so forth, after IndyMac went down, the FDIC confirmed that the agency had insurance funds, had assets of 52 billion. That's all there is in the kitty. Once that's gone, there'll be no more. And you know, we saw today the money markets, a big fund there, stopping people from taking money out. It's almost unheard of. We've seen Morgan down 37%. We've seen Goldman down 20%. We've seen the Halifax in the United Kingdom being bombarded by short sellers. It's actually a crazy scene out there, but it's a collapsing situation. As I pointed out in a response to one of the people who watch my videos, I really believe that this will just continue to deflate all the way down. What I'm going to point out to you now is what the central banks have been doing to manipulate the situation. I'm going to play the clip in a second from CNBC. But if you work out the liquidity that was put in by the central banks, it tallies up to somewhere in the region of around about 220 billion. That's $250 billion. And my question is where do they get this money from? You know, they can't keep on pumping liquidity into the marketplace and saying we're pumping liquidity in. Those of you in the know out there know that what they do is they print the money. And that in turn means that you and I will end up paying for it, because prices will eventually go up. It may not be straight away, it may well be in a deflationary marketplace, but because the money will become less and less valuable, in the end we'll end up having to pay more money for the goods that we buy, and we'll have to pay more money in the taxation to pay back the borrowed loans that the government have taken out from their central banks at interest. And we're going to have to pay back this money. Now this is over a one-day period that we're talking about. I'll roll the clip from CNBC so you can actually listen to what some of the commentators talked about when they looked at the sort of money that was going on.
35. So it looks like, David, the response of the central banks around the world is to provide liquidity to smooth over what I guess the inevitability you're talking about, which is this big black hole at the center of the financial universe.
I think the words, the big black hole at the center of this financial universe, does it justice. We have such a hole there now that at some stage it doesn't matter if they keep on supporting some banks and letting other banks go. That's pure manipulation. No one can actually guess or know what's going on there. Only those in the know, only those that are in the meetings would know what was going on. And there's an interesting little clip here which I want to insert as well from CNBC, where it talks about, they may not tell you these things directly on the TV, but they talk about it.
You talk to those guys long term. Tell me about the model. They all concede. You know, they may not go on TV and concede this. They may say something completely opposite today, but they all concede behind the scenes that, you know, the model's going to look different. Yeah. They're going to be with banks probably. And listen, there's lots of banks out there that are all right. Wells Fargo's all right. HSBC could do a deal. There are cultural issues. It never works. But, you know, this is the problem is that these firms just roll the dice in ways that, you know, I remember I had a debate with some guy on Power Lunch about a year ago. He worked for Portfolio. I have many debates, but he's a good kid. His name is Jesse Eisinger. I used to work with him at the Wall Street Journal. And he wrote this really good story in Portfolio about leverage and how that would destroy all these firms. He did this literally in 2007, and I said, well, I think these guys are smart enough to get out of it. And you know what? They're not. And I think that was the problem, that, you know, there's not a lot of confidence in Wall Street's ability to manage risk, other than Goldman Sachs.
What about the government's ability to regulate at this point? I mean, we're going to talk about a whole game-changing situation here.
So yesterday we see them come to the rescue of AIG, and we see them let Lehman fell, and we see them let Bear Stearns be bought at knockdown prices. And really, all of this has come about because of the leverage they give you. I mean, they talk about homeowners taking out bad deals when they went in and had homes 5, 6, 7 times their amount of income from their jobs. So they took out mortgages, you know, 6, 7 times above their annual wage. These companies leverage themselves anywhere from 24 to 40 times.
Lehman Brothers, you know, ran around for, you know, when it attacked the short seller David Einhorn, another guy, who, deserves a lot of credit because he called this very early with Lehman Brothers. And in their attacks on Einhorn, they were bragging about how much they deleveraged. Well, guess what? They went to 30-to-1 leverage. That means for every dollar they have in capital, they borrow 30 more. They went from 30-to-1 to 24-to-1. I mean, that to me is not deleveraging.
What was the norm a few years ago on Wall Street?
Excuse me?
What was the norm for?
Well, 30-to-1 was the norm, something like that, a little higher.
So yesterday we see them come to the rescue of AIG, and we see them let Lehman fell, and we see them let Bear Stearns be bought at knockdown prices.
We try not to ask inflammatory questions, but now that this is done, right? Maybe you can characterize what the situation would have looked like for average Americans if this had not happened.
Well, again, the financials and the strength of the underlying statutory companies is strong. So Joe Consumer, I believe, would have been fairly well protected. And I don't know that we would have even needed to trigger the social safety nets that sit behind insurance companies, guaranteed funds, because, again, when you look at the financials of the underlying statutory companies, they were solid.
Yeah.
So,
but it would not have been pretty.
Divorces are never pretty, right? So, we would have had, obviously some difficult times to sort it all out, but I think at the end of the day, consumers would have been okay. And let's talk about that for a second, too.
Yeah.
When we talk about, some of the call for regulation, stricter regulation, and we look at the upheaval in the market over the last 18 months in the financials, where, throughout it all, the insurance interests have been protected, right? We're talking about, issues on Wall Street, really, that have, been immune to insurance interests. So I would tell you the federal regulators have some questions to answer, and we state regulators, we get attacked a lot, are standing on pretty solid ground right now.
Right.
So why did they save it? What made AIG savable and Lehman not? What made Bear Stearns a buyout target at such small amounts of money? Manipulation. It's getting so severe and so clear in everybody's face, and it costs you and it costs me. The reality is that we will end up picking up this bill. They're going to put out Treasury notes. Have a look at another clip from CNBC today proving that they're actually going to put out Treasury notes to shore up the Fed's balance sheet.
Stocks are slumping as investors weigh soaring bank borrowing costs and housing starts sink to their lowest level since 1991. The SEC has issued new rules effective tomorrow designed to curb naked short-selling abuses. And the Treasury has begun a new temporary T-bill sale program to aid the Fed's balance sheet as it helps companies like AIG, Fannie Mae.
So that means you're paying. That means I'm paying. All across the Western world we're going to pay. And the most scariest thing about this is that often, and history has shown this, people end up paying with their lives due to war, due to famine, due to this type of mismanagement. And wars come about because governments figure, heck, we've got to keep the people in control somehow. They'll start taking away your freedoms, as they have been doing, just in case they have to send us off to war. Now, all I can tell you is that it's not right that your children, my children, another man's children should pay for the mistakes and the damages that this type of situation causes. Jesse Ventura wrote a book with a great title recently. I haven't read it, but I love the title. It says, "Don't Start the Revolution Without Me." Ron Paul, through the last year, talked about revolution. And obviously the campaign for liberty goes on. It's about time, people, we potentially started thinking exactly about that. Make sure you stand up for your democratic rights and vote this coming election. I know a lot of you out there believes that it may not make a difference. But you have a duty to vote. And if things don't change, you have a duty to stand up. You have a duty to campaign. You have a duty to basically get out on the streets. Because there's no way that my children or your children should go to war to pay for the costs of these inept leaders. Whether you believe in conspiracy or whether you believe in spirituality, that's down to you. But you need to make sure that you don't get caught by these people. Get out of the system as best as you can. Make sure you own your own stuff. Make sure you're growing your own stuff. and make sure you're defending your own freedoms. Maybe someone should give Jesse a call. Maybe somebody should pick up the reins. And maybe somebody should be starting a revolution.